Last week in the national press, there was an article about how Bible sales have gone through the roof over the last couple of years. 6 million Bibles being sold in the UK, which provoked a question in my home group. Which version of the Bible should I be reading? How do we have different versions? So the first thing you need to be aware of is that the New Testament was written in Greek. This is my Greek New Testament. The Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew with some bits in Aramaic. Here's my Hebrew and Aramaic version. To complicate things a little bit further, there's also a translation of the Old Testament in Greek, which we call the Septuagint, which I have here in 2 volumes. And that's generally the version the New Testament is quoting when it's writing in Greek. All that's to say is, to have our English versions, they are a translation from the Hebrew and Aramaic in the Old Testament and the Greek in the New Testament. And whenever you translate anything, you can have a very literal way of translating or a kind of more free, dynamic way of translating it. And that's basically why we have different versions. On the more literal end, and I've got some over here, we have the ESV and the NRSV. Now, the NRSV, New Revised Standard Version, is kind of your standard text that universities use when they're using a translation. The ESV, the English Standard Version, a very literal translation. At Theological College, we used to call it the extra special version. Very literal translations. Then in the middle, we have what's called the New International Version, the NIV. This is what we use here at Emmanuel. It's kind of in the middle between a literal translation and a more dynamic, readable translation. A little bit in for that is a really easy version to read. This is the New Living Translation, NLT. This is actually the first Bible I ever bought myself as a 17, 18-year-old. A treasured possession, easy to read if you struggle with reading. And then you have some kind of really dynamic versions. This is The Message, and this is actually The Word on the Street by Rob Lacey, which is really free. Sometimes people don't say these are translations, but are more kind of versions, interpretations. They are really free. The best way to illustrate this is the famous verse, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," which you have in the Old English version, the King James Version. Interestingly, the ESV and the NRSV translate that verse in exactly the same way. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Then, in the NIV, you have a little bit more of a kind of middle way. "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." The NLT goes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need." And then the Message translation is, "God my shepherd, I don't need a thing." And then finally, in the really free version of Rob Lacey, he's translated it this way: You are my guide and my guard, my minder, my mentor. What more do I need? So there you go, there's a range of translations. My advice is buy a couple. And when you're reading the Bible, contrast them and you can kind of see the different energies. But I'll also give a shout out. If you have the resources, time, give a go learning Greek and Hebrew. There's so many good resources online and it brings the Bible alive. But actually, you can read it in English. The Holy Spirit works through it in English. And here's a little controversial thing. We would still call all of these the Holy Bible. But when it comes to the Quran, the Muslim holy book, they don't call a translation of the Quran. It's always called a translation of. Whereas actually, in the Christian faith, because of the work of the Holy Spirit, we're going, actually, this is still the Holy Bible. The Holy Spirit is working through them. So read them, read a different couple of versions, and allow God to speak to you.